in order to gain knowledge, to be more, to be better than they were, Adam and Eve relinquished their sovereignty. In other words, they relinquished their connection with the divine in order to seek knowledge and information and well-being somewhere else. And that is what I think the greatest sin of Adam and Eve, the relinquishment of their sovereignty. And that's a question we face today, each and every day. Do we see ourselves as still sovereign, or do we have the potentiality to be sovereign beings in the divine hierarchy? It's clear to me in my understandings of my own experience that the events of my connection with the divine indicated very clearly that I was being contacted in a way that assured that I understood that my connection was secure and intimate and personal, and that it also was the fruit of the sovereignty of my connection. In other words, it was the fruit of the sovereignty of the being that connected with me, my angel. My angel was a sovereign being. And the message that I received is that that is my potentiality to be a fully completed sovereign being. And it's very clearly stated in the Gospel of Thomas in Logion number 2. I'll read it to you because it's really a powerful text. Yeshua says, "If you are searching, you must not stop until you find. When you find, however, you will become troubled. Your confusion will give way to wonder. In wonder, you will reign over all things. Your sovereignty will become your rest." So there's some interesting portions of that text. Of course, searching till you find is familiar. However, when you find, you will become troubled. That is an unfamiliar text. And I think that's the circumstance we find ourselves in now. We are troubled by what we have found, and we are troubled by the fact that our sovereignty has been compromised, and it is a very troubling thing because we see the fruits of it in the distress and disaster that occurs with those who do not have a connection to the divine, who are not aspiring to become angels. But that confusion gives way to wonder. As we begin to understand our potentiality, we begin to understand the wonderment of the divine hierarchy and the sovereignty that is offered to us freely and without considerations. And in that sovereignty, there is a reign. There is a divine reign, an authority, as it were. And in that authority, there is a sovereignty of which we can rest. But I want to expand this a little bit and say, well, the divine hierarchy reminds me a lot of an organization of a country. Each of the angels had a nation, angels of the nations. There was a sovereignty there of the nations, in addition to our individual sovereignty. And that has to do with loyalty. The loyalty to that which we are sovereign over and that which is sovereign over us. And that's a very powerful consideration. Loyalty to the divine hierarchy. Loyalty to what it is we have come to understand about who we are. And that is why the wilderness experience is so powerful, because it allows us the opportunity to establish our sovereignty over ourselves and over the connection that we have with the divine hierarchy. So in other words, even though our loyalty is certainly required here, we are sovereign over our own connection, our own loyalty. We are sovereign over loyalty. How wonderful is that? To be able to have that opportunity, that potentiality. And I think the world that we are in today is calling us to reaffirm our sovereignty, our reign over our connection, our reign over ourselves. That we will rise in the divine hierarchy in order to exercise our divine right. What more can be said there? Our divine right. When we relinquish that right and we allow someone else to establish connections for us and to provide for us, that is a death trap, a mortality trap. And we see it all the time as people relinquish their sovereignty in order for someone else to take care of them. I think they called that socialism. Here, you take care of me. I'll do whatever you say. And your slavery is almost certain. So the essence of our sovereignty is to not, number one, relinquish it by turning to someone else to provide information or security or food. That is the downfall of humankind. And it leads to competitions and jealousies and who will get more and who has less. And it is the seedbed for a socialistic tyranny, to be fair. And sovereignty is not talking about fairness. It's about your exercising your divine right to be a sovereign being. And that's what is the goal of our incarnations as human beings, to rise in the divine hierarchy, to understand and grasp hold of our sovereignty, and to use that as an opportunity to reign on this earth as beings of the divine hierarchy, rising as angels. I think that's the surety that we seek. If you think that your government will do this, then you are not a very good observer of human behavior, nor of our government, because our government, in its full array and unvarnished truth, is something of a monstrosity. We are governed by monsters in this secular world. I wish it weren't so, but in fact it is. The facts are there to be seen by all. We can see them all. There's no secret to it. I mean, there's the secret of non-disclosure, but it's very apparent. It's very apparent. In the same way that so many things are apparent, but we don't really have the proof of them in a logical way or empirical way. They are apparent truths. So there's a lot of ways to understand miracles and the divine hierarchy. It is apparent, but we can't necessarily prove it. The fact of our government is very apparent. We can't necessarily prove it, but it's apparent. And that's a good word to use to kind of understand how things work without requiring a burdensome sort of empirical proof system. I don't think that's going to do very well in that sense. But that apparent reality is one that needs to be understood. And if you are willing to go into the wilderness, and if you're willing to be in the presence of beauty, you will have all the proof you need of the underlying truths of our apparent reality. That is a sublime thing, and that's why meditation is so important, because it allows us to spend more time in our own experience to a degree that we become wise about our own experience. So it is a wisdom walk. Going into the wilderness is definitely a wisdom walk, even though it's filled with the terrors of the forest and jungle, or the ice sheets. And beauty, similarly, is fraught with danger, lest we be seduced rather than enthralled. And I mean enthralled in a great way, not being in the thrall of someone, but enthralled in the wonderment which it speaks of in this text. You will give way to wonder, the wonder of beauty, and the wonder of the wilderness experience as we become one with the natural world in its most pristine way, and we understand the nature of the beast and how we will reign over ourselves when in front of the beast. And the beast seeks to devour us. And we say no, because we have a right to defend ourselves. We have a right to say what we want. And that's the great lesson of Yeshua in the desert with the evil one. He was able to say what he wanted, and he was able to say what he didn't want. And in those distinctions, there is a reign. There's no confusion. And we do sometimes find ourselves in confusion. But I think if we will continue to meditate on the fact of our confusion, that confusion will give way to wonder. Because we will attain a clarity there, a moral clarity of being in the light. We are children of light. And when we step away from the source of light, there is confusion. And it's by necessity, because it is an opportunity then to come to a full understanding of what it is that we are doing. And that is what allows us to reign, reigning in full knowledge, not reigning in confusion, not sovereign in uncertainty, but sovereign in certainty. And that is the blessing that we have. It is before us, and we can claim that. So I would say to you, learn how to be self-sufficient in the context of going into the desert, going into the wilderness, making that your trek, and understanding that in that trek there is an opportunity to find moral clarity and the basis for our sovereignty. I think that's what happened to me. That's why I can say the things that I'm saying, because they are directly part of my life experience of being in the presence of my angel and feeling the moral clarity, the well-being, the love, the embrace of the divine hierarchy is so powerful that it gives pause to all other experiences. You're not going to continue in those experiences. So the important part of the meditation on your experiences is to preserve them, to continue to give them life without necessarily embellishing on them, but to be true to them. So I would ask you to reinvestigate your life experiences, to see if there's something there that maybe you missed or didn't spend the time with, that gives you clues into the nature of your sovereignty and where does your reign begin and end, and where is your loyalty. Your loyalty is the connection, the embrace of the divine hierarchy, and the rising in the divine hierarchy is a powerful thing because it adds to our experience. If you want to expand your experience, then meditating on the experiences that you've had to allow you to embrace an aspect of that you didn't understand, that you now understand, is a rising in and of itself, a coming closer to being in the direct light, not the indirect light, not in the hazy light, but the direct light. So that's my meditation for today, to begin to think about our sovereignty. And the sovereignty in the context of the world that we are living in and what we are doing to ourselves by our choices. And in some cases, it means a return to the wilderness experience to get some clarity, moral clarity, to become self-sufficient, and to stand up for what it is that the moral clarity that we have tells us we are about to do, what we are to do. What are we to do? How do you know? Well, You've got to have some moral clarity. That's what tells you. Otherwise, you're just going to be reacting, and it'll be upsetting because you won't really understand it. You'll be just in a pure reactive mode, and there's no real hope there to be organized, because that's what I'm telling you. Your loyalty to the divine hierarchy is the organizational structure that you seek and that I seek and that we all seek. That's where it is. Following a man here, good they may be, is not sufficient. There must be an anointing, a connection, and in that connection, there is rest. Amen.